Hello class, welcome to a Truth Tables mini lesson. Okay, so in this lesson, we are going to talk about something called a truth table, and you are going to learn how to make one. At first, they look kind of confusing, but I promise as you get the hang of them, people usually think they're kind of fun or easy points on a test, as people like to say. So first, let's talk about some new symbols. So if you look at the top, I wrote out some symbols. So when we have that, it kind of looks like an arrow pointing up. That stands for the word and. And in order for an and statement to be true, you need two things to be true. So if I told you, tonight you need to watch this video and do this worksheet, when you came to class the next day, I would expect that you had done both, right? And means both have to happen. So both have to be true in order to be true. Now, if we have an upside down arrow, or it kind of looks like a V, it stands for the word or. So in that case, if I said you can watch this video or do this worksheet, I would only expect you to come to class with one of them done. So an or means that one truth equals true. And then we have something that is a little scrunched on the side. Let me actually rewrite that. That squiggle, remember, means negation, and that represents the opposite, right? Okay, negation, opposite, not. You'll hear me use all of them. So in order to do a truth table, the first thing that you will set up is you will take the regular statements. So in this case, P and Q are our two statements. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to combine or come up with a combination of all of the possible trues and falses between those two items. So P could be true, and so could Q. But I could also have where P is true and Q is false, right? I could also have where P is false and Q is true, or they could both be false. Those are all of my possible combinations. Now, the next column you'll see is the negation of P, or the opposite of P. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to that first column, that's P, and I'm going to do the opposite of whatever is written here. So this is a true, so here it's going to be a false. This was a true, so here it's false. This is false, this is true, false, true. Now, I'm going to move over a column, and I'm going to look at the negation of Q. So I have to go back to that original Q column and do the opposite of whatever is listed in that column. So the very first Q value was true. So the opposite of that is false. And I had a false that becomes a true. I had a true that becomes a false, and a false that becomes a true. Okay. So now I have the first four columns all filled in, right? Now the last thing I'm going to look at is this compound statement. So I have the negation of P, so I'm going to look at this column. Then remember, this symbol right here means the word or. Q. So I'm going to look at these two columns over here, the Q column and the not P column. And I have the word or. So in order for the whole thing to be true, I only need one true in order to be true. Sorry, I just repeated myself. Okay, so here I have a true and a false. I have at least one true, so my whole statement is true. Here I have a false and a false. I don't have at least one true, so that means it is false. Here I have a true, true. I have at least one true, so that is true. Here I have a false true. That means I have at least one true, so the whole thing is true. Okay, so that's the first glimpse into a truth table. Now for this next one, something important to note is these first two columns are always the same. It's just all the possible combinations of true, false. And then you look at the negation column and make it the opposite of whatever statement we're looking at. Okay? After you've done that, then you start looking at the compound statements. So for this column, I'm looking at the negation of P and Q. So in order for an and to be true, I need both values to be true. So here I have a true, false. Both of them are not true, so that means it is overall false. I have a false, false. I don't have two trues, so it is false. I have a true, true. That's two trues. That makes it true. If I have a false, true, that is false, because I don't have the two trues that I need in order to make it true. Okay, so then the next column, if we look, is a little more complicated. So I'm looking at P, so statement P all the way over here on the left, or, and then the statement that I just looked at, right here. So I'm going to look at those two columns, the very first one and then the last one that I've done, and I have an or, so I need one true in order to make the whole thing true. So I have a true, false. I have at least one true, so the whole thing is true. I have a true, false. I have at least one true, so the whole thing is true. False, true. I have at least one true, the whole thing is true. False, false. I don't have at least one true, so the whole thing is false. Okay, let's do one more. So again, these always start out the same. You do all the possible combinations of true, false. I usually do them in the same order just to help me remember. And then I look for the negation, and I'm doing the negation of Q. So in this case, that is going to give me false, true, false, true. Now I'm looking at the negation of Q or P. So I'm looking at the first and third columns. In or, I just need one true to be true. So true, false, that's true. True, true, that is, true. False, false, that's going to give me a false. And false, true, that gives me a true. Okay? Now that I've looked at these two columns, I'm now looking for P and Q. So I'm back to these first two columns, and I need two trues in order to be true. So I start out with a true, true, that's true. True, false, that's false. False, true, that's false. And false, false, that is false. Okay? So I compared my first two columns with an and. Now, I'm looking at not the negation of Q or P, so that's this column right here, and I'm doing an or statement in conjunction with P and Q. So I just need one true in order for the whole thing to be true. So the first one, I have a true, true, that's true. True, false, with an or, that's true. False, false is false. And true, false is true. Okay, so you're going to get a worksheet to practice a few of these on your own. Please be sure to ask questions. I'm more than happy to help, and I hope you have a great day.